Hello everybody. Hear2See channel got a recommendation for you. Frame: The Astonishing True Stories of Wrongful Conviction. What a book. Awesome. Hear2See focused on sharing pearls of wisdom, nuggets of knowledge, understanding the difficult, and instructions for a better life. Frame: what's it about? What a book. In John Grisham's first work of nonfiction, since The Innocent Man, the master of the legal thriller, Associated Press teams up with Jim McCloskey, the godfather of the innocence movement, Texas Monthly, to share 10 harrowing, true stories of wrongful convictions. John Grisham is known worldwide for his best-selling novels, but it's his real-life passion for justice that led to his work with Jim McCloskey of Centurion Ministries, the first organization dedicated to exonerating innocent people who have been wrongfully convicted. Together, they offer an inside look at the many injustices in our criminal justice system. A fundamental principle of our legal system is a presumption of innocence, but once someone has been found guilty, there's very little room to prove doubt. The 10 true stories shed light on Americans who were innocent but found guilty and forced to sacrifice friends, families, and decades of their lives to prison while the guilty parties remain free. In each of the stories, John Grisham and Jim McCloskey recount the dramatic, hard-fought battles for exoneration. They take a close look at what leads to wrongful convictions in the first place and the racism, misconduct, flawed testimony, and corruption in the court system that can make them so hard to reverse. Implacably researched and told with a binge-worthy suspense as only John Grisham can deliver, Framed is the story of winning freedom when the battle already seems lost and the deck is stacked against you. John Grisham and Jim McCloskey have worked together before, of course, on Jim McCloskey's book, When Truth Is All You Have. It's his memoir, Faith, Justice, Freedom of the Wrongfully Convicted. And John Grisham did the foreword on that book. Now, if you're not familiar with John Grisham's an expert storyteller whose unforgettable characters fight justice in a world that isn't always fair. John Grisham is the author of 50 consecutive #1 bestsellers, which have been translated into nearly 50 languages. His recent books include Camino Ghosts, The Exchange, After the Firm, and his third Jake Brigance novel, A Time for Mercy, which is being developed by HBO as a limited series. Grisham is a 2-time winner of the Harper Lee Prize for Legal Fiction and was honored with the Library of Congress Creative Achievement Award for Fiction. When he's not writing, Grisham serves on the board of directors of the Innocence Project and of Centurion Ministries, 2 national organizations dedicated to exonerating those who have been wrongfully convicted. Much of his fiction explores deep-seated problems in our criminal justice system. John lives on a farm in central Virginia. Who's Jim McCloskey? Jim McCloskey founded Centurion Ministries. Centurion was the first innocence organization in the world. Jim McCloskey established Centurion as a 501c3 organization in 1993 after the exoneration of George de los Santos. In 1980, Jim McCloskey, Centurion's founder, felt the call to leave the corporate world and enter the ministry. While attending Princeton Theological Seminary, Mr. McCloskey chose to serve for a year as a student chaplain at the Trenton State Prison. There he met Jorge de los Santos, who was a convicted murderer and serving a life sentence. Mr. de los Santos claimed to be innocent of the crime, and after reviewing the case record, Jim came to believe him and decided to help him. After reading the entire record of Mr. de los Santos' case, Jim spent his personal time savings to investigate the case. After several years of investigation and legal proceedings, Jim, in partnership with attorney Paul Castellero, got Mr. de los Santos' conviction overturned. Mr. de los Santos was exonerated and freed from prison in 1983. After Mr. de los Santos' exoneration, Mr. McCloskey received requests for help from others who claimed they were wrongfully convicted. He made the choice to dedicate his life to freeing the innocent and founded the first innocence organization in the world. To date, Centurion has freed 63 men and women who were serving life or death sentences for crimes they did not commit. You can see the link to the Centurion website in the description below, but there is their mission and their work. And they do tremendous work, obviously. And Framed is not only a book, it's also an audible book, an audiobook. And Michael Beck is the narrator. And Michael Beck is awesome. Here's his Wikipedia page, and he's an actor and has lots of film credits and such. But as far as narration goes, look at this list of books that he's narrated from 2004 to 2024, because he narrated Framed. And look at all the books he's done for John Grisham. And I'm here to tell you that if Michael Beck narrated it, it's worth listening to just because it's Michael Beck. Now you can find the books at Amazon and other booksellers, of course, and Amazon's got the books. And as I said, it's also available in Kindle and hardcover, paperback, and audiobook. And that's how I listened to it. I really enjoyed it. Again, Michael Beck is fantastic. Here is an audible sample of the book. Listen up.
Centurion has been involved in about 70 exonerations, and Jim was usually there, outside the prisons, when his innocent clients walked out and into the arms of their loved ones. He was there when they tasted freedom, and he was the reason for it. At some point a few years back, we began talking about this collection. The idea was simple. I would select 5 of my favorite stories, and so would Jim. The first challenge was to pick only 10, because there are so many. The second challenge was to limit each story to about 10,000 words. Since each story could fill a library, we knew the task would be formidable. We agreed that each would do his own writing, with limited input from the other. And so we wrote. Our goal with this book is to raise awareness of wrongful convictions and in some small way help to prevent more of them. It is an effort to shine light on some of the terrible and abusive tactics used by the authorities to convict innocent people. If we as a society had the political gumption to change unfair laws, practices, and procedures, we could avoid virtually all wrongful convictions.
This is Jim McCloskey again. As John points out, our association and friendship go back 15 years. We were drawn together by our mutual concern and compassion for those men and women across America who fell victim to a deeply flawed criminal justice system and were falsely convicted and sentenced to a life sentence or to death. John generously volunteered to write the foreword to my memoir, When Truth Is All You Have, published by Doubleday in 2020. That book recounts the 40-year history of Centurion Ministries' encounters with our nation's judicial system on behalf of the convicted innocent, as well as the personal journey that led me into this work. Naturally, I was honored when John invited me to co-write Framed with him. We quickly agreed that each of us would write 5 stories of real-life cases in which innocent defendants, much to their shock and disbelief, were found guilty of crimes they had absolutely nothing to do with. The 5 written by me are cases I personally worked on as case manager and lead investigator. Selecting these 5 from among the 70 or so individuals Centurion successfully freed was a challenge worthy of Solomon. I was fortunate in writing to be able to draw upon Centurion's voluminous in-house archival records collected during the many years of work on each case. These source materials include, but are not limited to, trial transcripts, police reports, legal briefs, judicial opinions, court records, and Centurion investigative reports. The subtitle of Framed is Astonishing True Stories of Wrongful Convictions. I can assure listeners, no matter what their background, that their response after reading each of these stories will be, "Did this really happen?" To which we, the authors, answer, "Yes, it did, and it happens far more often than you can imagine." It is our intention and hope that these stories are not only a compelling read, but at the same time serve as a microcosm of what is occurring throughout our nation's halls of justice. It is our attempt to bring to light systemic flaws in the justice system's infrastructure that cause untold tens of thousands of innocent souls to interminably languish in prison. The 23 defendants caught in the web of these 10 wrongful convictions needlessly spent decades in prison until the truth of their innocence finally emerged and set them free. 4 landed on death row, 2 of whom came within days of execution, while 1 was tragically executed. Perhaps it will surprise listeners that the racial makeup of the 23 is almost evenly split, 10 white and 13 black, demonstrating that this kind of injustice easily occurs across racial lines. Often the real killers were under the nose of the police from the outset of the crime, and in 2 cases, they were the star witnesses for the prosecution. DNA played an important role in several cases.
If that isn't enough to pique your interest, I don't know what else you need. But here is an interview on PBS with John Grisham talking about the Frame book. So listen to this excerpt.
Now, our next guest sits on the board of 2 organizations dedicated to helping people like Yusuf Salam who were wrongly incarcerated, the Innocence Project and the Centurion Ministries. John Grisham is a best-selling author and a household name around the world, and he channels his real-life passion for justice through his legal thrillers. For his next book, he teamed up with Centurion Ministries founder Jim McCloskey. The result is Framed: Astonishing True Stories of Wrongful Convictions. He joins Walter Isaacson to talk about the concept of a fair trial, the death penalty, and the flaws of interrogation.
Thank you, Biana and John Grisham. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Walter. How you doing? Good seeing you again.
Pretty good, pretty good. 50 number one best-selling novels you've written, all fiction. But about 20 some odd years ago, you wrote a piece of nonfiction called The Innocent Man. It's about a baseball player wrongly convicted. And now you've gone back to this again, gone back to doing a nonfiction book about people wrongly convicted. Why?
Why? Same reason as the novels. It's a great story. They're all great stories. Every wrongful conviction is from a pure storytelling point of view. They're just incredible stories because of the human suffering. Anytime you have great human suffering, you have great stories and great fiction, great nonfiction. Because of the injustice, the perseverance, the redemption, maybe a happy ending. All the elements are there. The loss, the sense of loss that these men have after spending 20 and 30 years in prison. And it was just, the stories are just, I'm drawn to the stories.
Are they connected to your fiction? Because your fiction has a lot of wonderful crime tales like that, and redemption is a theme in some of them.
I mean, that's where I come from. That's what I'm reading these days. I'm on the board of the Innocence Project. I have been for a long time. And now Centurion Ministries in Princeton, two great innocence advocacies. And so I deal with these cases. I read about these cases all the time. As innocence advocates, we take on these cases, and we have cases going on all the time that we work on for years. And I get familiar with the cases. If I'm lucky, I'll then meet the exonerees once they get out. That's the fun part, is to talk to these guys once they survive the nightmares that most of us cannot begin to comprehend. They're just incredible people, incredible stories.
Well, I hope that's whet your appetite for Framed. You will really, really enjoy it, and you'll never look at law enforcement the same again. Framed, the astonishing true stories of wrongful conviction. And like and subscribe. You can see these and other videos. And at the Hear2See channel, we've got playlists that have recommendations for books and movies, TV series, and various things of interest. So be sure to check those out, and you will be so glad you did. Comment below, share your experiences with us. Have you read John Grisham before? Have you read Framed? What do you think about it? If you don't know Jesus as your Lord and Savior, read the Gospel of John chapter 3 to learn about His forgiveness and talk to God about it. He loves you, you know. And keep watching. God bless.